Hi, my name is Bryan Kampbell and I'm a Communication Studies professor here at BVU. And I'm happy to be here on this episode of ACE to talk about showing up for life. Woody Allen said that 80% of success is showing up. And I think that's a lesson we need to be reminded of today. Now, showing up might sound simple, and in a way it is, but I also think it isn't always what we think it is. So let me talk about that a little bit. Sociologists often describe society as being made up of three sectors. The first sector is family and close friendships. The second sector is your job, work, and career. And the third and often forgotten sector is the civic sector. Now, as the name implies, the civic sector partly has to do with your engagement with politics, but probably more important than that is just civic engagement generally. Now, a truly successful, and I would argue a truly happy person, is active and present in all of these sectors. In other words, you need to show up for all of them. So today I'd like to talk a little bit about each of these sectors, what it looks like, and what it doesn't look like to show up for them. So first of all, what does it look like to show up for family and friendship? Well, it's no surprise that relationships are changing today. Psychologist Sherry Turkle worries that our friendships are becoming more instrumental. Quite simply, we make friends so we can use them. Now, of course, people have always used their friendships, but what we're experiencing today is something altogether different, and the verdict is in. More Americans are lonely, and Americans are lonelier than ever before. Romantic relationships are changing too. The mere variety of types of relationships available to people are hard to keep track of. There are friends with benefits relationships, the hookup culture, cohabitation, and so on. Now, there are a lot of myths about these new types of relationships out there, and while some people believe that these options give us more freedom, the truth is that researchers at the University of Virginia have found quite the opposite. These relationship types contribute as much to inequality and hurt feelings as anything. Again, the verdict is in. Many relationships just don't bring lasting happiness. For satisfying romantic relationships, there's no substitute for stability and commitment. But I think the solution is easy. Show up for relationships. And so I want to challenge you to be open to real committed relationships. That means being honest and open with your friends. And it means that you seek out and respond to real commitment. It means you don't avoid marriage. It means you don't avoid emotional intimacy with your partner. Anytime you pursue real intimacy, whether it's romantic or in the friend zone, you take a risk. Self-disclosure always makes you vulnerable to being hurt. Of course, I'm not saying to jump in with both feet the second you meet someone. I am saying dive in head first after you've gotten to know them a bit. Now, there are as many ways to avoid showing up for family and friendships as there are families and friends, but that's only the first sector of society. Happy and successful people also show up for work. The world of work is changing today as well. We often hear about how in 20 years most people will be working in jobs that don't exist yet. I think that's an exaggeration, but even if it's true, here's one thing that will always be true. People want committed employees. Of course, you can start by literally showing up for work and not calling in sick every time you don't feel like getting out of bed. Then there's being willing, especially when you're young and you don't have too many family commitments yet, to put in the long hours necessary to do quality work. But there's another aspect to showing up for work as well. Showing up for work means not giving up on your dreams. It means you don't play it safe. It means being willing to take risks. It's crucial that you be able to get lost in your work and that you can see its value intrinsically. So what does it look for you now? Well, to start with, I recommend showing up for class. Get into the habit. Don't give yourself permission to miss without a really good excuse. You are the only one who can really hold yourself accountable. If you set standards for yourself now, then showing up for your job won't be so hard. As for the second meaning of showing up for work, doing what you love. In college, it means majoring in something you really care about, not just whatever you think will get you a job. Sure, it's risky, but everything worthwhile is. Are you noticing a trend here? I said you should pursue intimate friendships even though they're risky, and now I just said that you should pursue a career that you really love even if though it's risky. I bet you can guess what I'll have to say about the third sector of society, the civic or community sector. Now, I said at the beginning that the third sector is easily forgotten. That's because we live in a world that is marked by what sociologist Jürgen Habermas calls civic privatism, which he defines as political abstinence combined with an orientation to career, leisure, and consumption. Let's look at that definition for a moment. You probably know what abstinence is from the time when you learned about the birds and the bees. Now think about what political abstinence might mean. It refers not only to a disengagement with politics and elections and things like that. It means that you don't really even pay attention to anything that is of public importance. In fact, it means that people are primarily interested in their families and careers. Now, I did just get done saying that you should be engaged in those areas, and I stand by that. But look again at the definition. What Habermas is worried about is what he calls an orientation to career, leisure, and consumption. And that is exactly what I cautioned against in my previous point. You see, if you just take the job that will pay the best so you can be a bigger consumer and then have more leisure, then not only are you not truly showing up for work, you're practicing civic privatism. You might also note that family doesn't even appear in Habermas' discussion. That's because for a society that's marked by civic privatism, family and relationships are things we consume, not things we really invest in. So what it comes down to is that civic privatism is almost like an anti-showing up for life. Now, I don't want you to hear me judging you. When you look at how bad and nasty most of our politics is, it's quite understandable why people tune out. But I do want to challenge you to work against that current, and I think the key to doing that is to start small and start local. Getting involved in a civic group with the goal of raising money to purchase new playground equipment in your local city would be an example. That's important civic work. Finding a faith community is also a central component as well. And you don't have to wait until you're finished with college. Start right here at BVU by getting involved in student organizations. Show up for ACES events even when they aren't required for you anymore. Show up for chapel. Participate in class discussions about controversial issues. Lose the Iowa nice syndrome. So let me review. Sociologists think of society as comprising three sectors: family, work, and community. Each of these is important, and a person with a satisfying and successful life is someone who has engaged all of these areas. Not necessarily equally, but they're tuned into them in some way. But there's one more thing. I have a bonus tip for you. Whenever you're at work or in relationships or community, turn off your phone. Sociologist Charles Murray wrote his own piece about showing up, which I used as a template here today. And in it, he talks about how people used to have to connect with kinfolk, colleagues, and community in order to do anything. And that changed with the invention of radio and television, both of which made entertainment more private. Hear that? Privatism? But those distractions, he says, were as nothing compared to the ways in which the IT revolution has made it possible for us to occupy ourselves all day and all night long by sitting in front of a screen. He's right. Our phones do lots of good things, but they stand in the way of showing up. And so I will invite you to turn off your phone and then show up for life. You'll be glad you did.